Welcome, friends. Silouan here. Just got back from Las Vegas, Nevada, where I was doing a class with law enforcement officers and a couple people from the Air Force from all over the country, from Nome, Alaska to Wyoming. And I was reminded, again, how important leadership is when it comes to the resiliency and mental health of an organization, especially first responders in the military. In mental health in general, let's say you're suffering from some, mental health illness and you're going to go see a counselor. To get better requires some fundamental values. One is you're going to have to be humble. You're going to have to be willing to look in the mirror and be honest, not just about what you see, but about what caused it. Then you're going to need some courage, because maybe some of the things you need to change in yourself or some of the things you need to address are going to be hard. Might be hard for you to address internally, might be hard for you to say something to somebody that you need to. And then lastly, it's going to take discipline. Nothing changes overnight. Bad habits develop over time. Ways of dealing with things develop over time. And so it takes a lot of discipline to learn new habits and to learn new ways of dealing with things. Well, that process is the exact same thing for leadership. A great leader has to be able to do the same thing. And it isn't just, for the mental health of the individuals in their organization. It's for the health of the organization in general. Because what's a great leader have to be able to do? One, they have to have the humility to be honest about what they see in themselves and their organization. They have to be honest about how they and their strengths and weaknesses impact the organization. And that can be hard. Okay, it can be hard. As you go up the food chain in leadership in life, if you don't learn early on to sort of take ownership over your own stuff, it gets harder as you go up the food chain. As you go up the chain of command, you have more people watching you and more people criticizing you. If you haven't learned humility, you kind of do the opposite of humility. You start acting like, I've got it all together. And so by the time you're the guy or gal in charge, if you're not careful, you're projecting this image of, I don't make mistakes, I got everything together. And you can get there in a very innocent way, like you don't intend to be that person. Yet, if you become that person, no one trusts you. And you have to be trusted to lead an organization. And if you learn that though, you learn humility. Step one, you're able to be honest about yourself and about your team. Secondly, it takes courage. Because any kind of change takes courage. People in general like the status quo. That's why you'll hear in a lot of organizations, even some good ones, well, why do we do this? And the answer you hear is, well, we've always done it that way. You know why? Because that's easy. Not changing is the comfortable way. And sometimes it takes courage to overcome it. Also takes courage if you know you're going to get pushback. If you know that what you want to do is the right thing, but at the end of the day, I guess, unless you're like the president, even then you've got the voters, but every leader answers to somebody or someone. It might be the board of directors, it might be the voters, it might be the person that puts you in charge. And they may not like the decision you're making. And if they may not like the decision you're making, or maybe you're kind of a weak leader and you're worried a lot about what the people below you think when you got to make a decision. And either way, it's going to take courage sometimes to make the right decision. And then lastly, you got to have discipline. And any organization without discipline is going to fall apart. It's never going to reach its potential. You have to have clear plans, clear goals, clear orders. You got to follow through. You got to know how to delegate. You can't micromanage. You have to be disciplined. The same thing as an individual. It is why, during the war, there was a time where I was at Fort Campbell. And they'd had like a suicide a week for over 3 months, almost 4 months. And they stood down the base and a bunch of workshops, a bunch of investigating, what had happened. I was one of the people that they asked to come down, did a few workshops, a few talks. I got to spend time with a psychologist who was in kind of charge of all of it. Like, why are we having all these suicides? And one of the things they discovered is one of the biggest factors was leadership. You could have 2 units in the same place at the same time, going through the same types of hell, and come back and come home and have completely different outcomes, or a disparity of outcomes and how the men and women in that unit handled it when they got home. And what they inevitably discovered was the biggest factor in those differences was leadership. That if you had leadership that was like, suck it up, deal with it, we're home now, don't think about that, you're going to have worse problems. If you had leadership that was like, hey, that was a tough deployment, we need to unpack that, we need to talk about it. Here's how it impacted me. Here's our therapist, go see him. You had better outcomes. Totally came down to leadership. And why is that? Because you're not going to put a group of men and women into hell and not impact them. That's humility. Humility is going, we are not so tough that we can go into hell and not be impacted by it. Then they had courage, the courage to buck the system, in a military that at the time, and it's really still that way, where it was suck it up, to be the leader that says, you don't have to suck it up, you can unpack it. It took courage. There were other people that might not like it. And then it took discipline. Because to properly take care of people, to make sure they don't fall through the cracks, to make sure that when they get help, they get reintegrated, to make sure that all the way down the chain of command, they're hearing that same message. Because if the general or the colonel says it, but then the first sergeant says, that's BS, you're going to lose people. So you have to have the discipline on all sorts of levels to follow through. So, kind of a short message today, but I really want you thinking about this. In some way, if you're watching this, you're a leader. You're in charge of somebody. You might be a parent, okay, and you're in charge of your family. You may be a leader at work, okay. I don't care if you're a team lead or you're a store manager or you're a shift manager, whatever it is. You may be a first responder and you're promoted. Now you might just be a family member, or you might be a member of the organization. You're still a leader. You influence other people in how you act. You influence other people in how you respond to things like trauma. People watch you, okay? We're all leaders in a way. That's why leadership is so important. And what I would ask you is whatever environment, whatever team you work in, whatever sphere you're in that your behavior influences other people, I want you to look in the mirror. And I want you to ask yourself, what are some habits, what are some things I do that may influence other people in a negative way? What are some things I could work on? Could I be a better communicator? Could I be more disciplined? Could I be the person that gets to work 15 minutes early, or am I the person that gets there right when work starts? Am I the first one to leave? Am I the last one to leave? Do I come prepared? Am I not prepared? Do I take care of myself? Okay, whatever it is, look in the mirror and commit yourself to making a change, because I'll tell you what, it will have the same impact on your sphere as it would in all those others. At the end of the day, in many ways, life is you either feel stuck, you feel hopeless, you feel like you're not moving towards where you want to be, or you feel like you are. It's the proverbial how you climb a mountain, one step at a time. You climb a mountain by just staring at the peak going, how am I going to get there? You find yourself just standing still, not getting any closer to climbing the mountain. But if you put your head down and you take one step at a time and then you look up, all of a sudden you're closer. It's what a leader does for an organization, and make sure every day they're taking those steps forward because they got clear goals, they got clear parameters, they got a plan. They feel invested. They know that what they're working on is what they need to be working on because of the humility that the leader had. And it's the same thing for us. Do we have the humility to look in the mirror, understand what we need to change in ourselves, have the courage to take that first step, and then have the discipline to keep taking steps? Humility, courage, discipline, whether for you or your team. And it starts by looking in the mirror, picking one thing, and working on it. Doesn't matter if I got you in a class in Vegas and you flew down from Alaska, or you're sitting in your room in Iowa. I don't care. The principles are the same. So take that first step, check back with me again. We'll talk about this some more. Hope you're having a great winter, wherever you may be. I'm Silouan, and I am out. Peace.